Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, we want to first apologize for starting some minutes late. It was scheduled to be, brothers and sisters, for 6 o'clock, and then it wound up being 6:30. And as you can see, it is winding up being now 6:45. Brothers and sisters, the intention and the purpose of this presentation, brothers and sisters, is to get the information out there regarding the fact that some say that there is no evidence of people to have lived that the Bible speaks of. Now, while this has been presented on several platforms and several matters, we do know and understand that such is not accurate, that there is abounding evidence of such. Now, we may want to go different routes to sit there and speak upon this. There is the evidence, brothers and sisters, that comes from the Book of Kings that speaks of Tahaka of Ethiopia. There is the reference that comes from, brothers and sisters, Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar, both people mentioned in the Bible. There is the reference that comes from the Assyrian records, brothers and sisters, that speaks of Tiglath-Pileser as well as Shalmaneser and Sennacherib. There is, brothers and sisters, the reference that comes from the Persians that speaks of Cyrus, that speaks of Darius, that speaks of Cambyses, brothers and sisters. So those are nations that are outside of the scriptures. Pardon me. Those are nations that are, or people of those nations that are mentioned in the scriptures that are not of the house of Israel. Let me state it as such. My bad, my fault, if I will. So what do we want to do and point out for reference purposes? We are on the platforms of Mordeh Yeshaya History Lessons, Mordeh Yeshaya History Lessons 2, as well, brothers and sisters, as Mordeh Yeshaya Torah Lessons. These are things that we want to emphasize on for reference purposes. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, I ask you, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, I ask you, please type in the number 4, brothers and sisters. So what we want to do, brothers and sisters, without any further ado, is get into this particular matter right here. Shalom, my lady, Sarai. Shalom, my brother, Yirmiyahu. These are two people, first starting with the significant other in my life, my lady Sarai, who definitely online and offline encourages me, supports me, and wants me to do better in online and offline as well. So I definitely do thank the Most High for having her in my life in that particular manner. Best relationship that I've had with a lady outside of my biological mother, which we know is a different kind of relationship. I bite no tongue in cheek when I state that for reference and for edification purposes. Brothers and sisters, the brother Yirmiyahu, a person who, not to be maybe speaking too much online, that I've never met in person, but behind the scenes has definitely been a brother to sit there and speak upon matters to me, on guiding me online, offline, certain matters and things of that kind of nature. So I definitely give honor to the Most High for having even an extended friend, whether we met in person yet or not. In that particular case, you have to cherish those kind of things, which kind of leads me into a sidebar matter, brothers and sisters, and that's this. Recently, I went, well, very recent, that is to say when the sun is down and Sabbath was over for this week. Well, this week done passed, it's a new week with this, right? I went to go and pick up something, and the place where I went to go pick it up from didn't have it. So I wanted a specific type of thing, in that I don't eat fried food anymore. And I didn't have any prepared food myself. So not to get too personal, I went to go to a place that has food that's not fried, because I no longer eat fried in that manner. For what they're asking for in pricing, I was okay with. And for what I wanted, they did not have. and they said, do I want, a fried piece instead? I said, see, I asked specifically for grilled. I don't do fried. You understand? So there's no need to sit there and ask if I wanted something I never even asked for. Why not just ask, is there anything else we can get for you? And then let me decide. So I looked and I said, of the things there, I said, well, can you substitute that thing that you don't have with this? Oh, well, for what you want in grilled, that's going to take, say, 30 or so minutes. You just got to wait. You know what I'm going to do with my non-cooking self? I went somewhere else and I got something else. You're not going to sit there and just say, in manners, in business or otherwise, oh, you just got to wait. You don't do that to people, brothers and sisters. So to the people who support the channel in that manner, I definitely don't want to keep people waiting. I don't want to have to postpone presentations when people share it on their own platforms and things of that kind of nature. You have to respect people, brothers and sisters. When my internet was not working its best with the audio, for those who do know, kind of created some frustration. People were telling me, oh, it ain't your fault, but I'm putting my name and my platform out there to people, and it's not looking good. So I have to take it personal. Take that same personal feeling and sit there and try to make it manifest as something that's positive and uplifting instead. But brothers and sisters, I ask you all to get your pens, your pads, your paper, and to take notes. We do not intend for this to be over an hour and a half, brothers and sisters, in that I have a conference call with a company regarding certain things after this presentation. So without any further ado, brothers and sisters, asking you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Let us pull up the PowerPoint and start in this particular manner. Thank you for that. So let's see what we have here, brothers and sisters. Giving honor to the Most High. This presentation is brought to you by Danitepublications due to the fact that for some time, people have used the dead of the Egyptians as a catalyst to say other nations have no existence is why this is presented. What am I saying? They're looking at dead pharaohs. They're looking at dead queens of Egypt and say, well, if I can't find the dead among a certain person or certain people or certain group or certain nation, then that nation had no existence. If that be the case, one may want to sit there and talk a little bit about Egyptian things. There were not less than 30 dynasties of Egypt, 32 dynasties. Of the 32 dynasties of Egypt, 7 or so were not native Egyptian. And of the 24, 25 that were native Egyptian, they were not all related outside of just being of the same nation. It wasn't like one set family of the Egyptians that continued and it had interruptions in between. You have, for instance, Horemheb, who ruled in Dynasty 18, and he was not related to Akhenaten. He was not related to Hatshepsut. He was not related to Thutmose, brothers and sisters. You understand? Sometimes in the same dynasty, you had it to where people were ruling while not being related to either the predecessor or the successor. So, as we pointed out before, you had it to where Egyptians would sit there and take the name of something and erase it out in order to sit there and have that person's memory to be marred, to be tarnished. So it's not far-fetched knowing what they did to Ramses II's son and those kind of court records, that they would not sit there and do something to say a matter of evidence of Joshua, the son of Nun. So Israelites, I want to say, do not fret, do not worry, do not sit there and get quote unquote disenchanted when it's a thing where they're asking me for evidence and I can't sit there and show you Ezekiel's tomb, but you can sit there and show me Seti's. We're going to talk about that very, very meticulous in this. So let us, brothers and sisters, get into this presentation, and hopefully everybody is well and will be better. Please subscribe to the channel. If the priesthood is not the same, the culture is not the same. Let us look at Leviticus chapter 21, 1 through 2, and verse 5. It goes to say, speak unto the children of Aaron, the priests, and say unto them, they shall not make baldness on their heads. Let us look at Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 29. Cut off the hair and cast it from thee, and take up lamentations on high places, for the Most High have rejected the generation of his wrath. What do we want to point out? Ancient Israelite men were not known for having the bald head. In that case, I'm not saying I never had a Caesar or a bald head or a baldy, but it was not in general the culture, certainly for the priesthood, to sit there and have it in that particular case. You understand? So cutting off the hair in the book of Job as well as in the book of Jeremiah was a sign of mourning. It was not a sign of happiness. It was not a sign of it's Friday night, which we're not doing certain things on the Shabbos and everything like that. Just got paid, going to the club, got a fresh haircut. That wasn't the culture of Israel. You understand? It was let your hair grow. And there were sisters who was having a business while braiding or locking or twisting or oiling your hair. You understand? Ecclesiastes brings it out to say, let your hair lack no ointment. Let your garments remain white and let your hair / your head lack no ointment. Why will the people be told to let their head lack no ointment? Because obviously you got hair on it. Your hair has to sit there and be nourished. Just want to point that out for reference purposes. Now, cutting off your hair and casting it is a sign of mourning, like for the dead or so when you're missing a relative in the Israelite culture. The priesthood, it says he shall not make any baldness on his head. But now, when you look at the Egyptian culture, brothers and sisters, we know that their priests were known for their bald heads because they would shave every day. They referred to it as being clean. Why do you think you might have the plague of flies in Egypt? The plague of gnats, the plague of lice, if you will, which lays in your head aches. Why do you think you might sit there and have say something in that particular case? And then you see their priesthood always shaving their hair. Pepi of Dynasty 4 used to have his servants to be laid down or so, having them lay down and putting honey on them. So the flies will sit there and not be on the pharaoh, but rather go to where the servants was at. So when we see later on the plague of flies, Egypt was known for having certain things that was not what we were shown when we went there in the ancient world. Read the Ebers Papyrus, for instance, Ebers. Read Deuteronomy 28 when it says the diseases of Egypt, which you was afraid of. What diseases of Egypt? Brothers and sisters, you had, no disrespect intended, people like Tuknuk Amun, who was partially blind, according to some, and having bad blood at the age of 18, 19 and did not live to see 21. Correct me if I'm wrong. So while brothers and sisters, I'm not the healthiest person on earth, and while many of my brothers and sisters and friends are not the healthiest people on earth, we do not at the same token want to sit there and practice those ways that will cause us to be unhealthy. So just want to point that out. Now, as my lady typed in there, Israelite men are particularly known for their beards. Now, that's what the Hebrew word for beard is zakwan. The Hebrew word for elder is zakwan. Did you know that in slavery, they used to sit there and have you shave your beards? Did you know that in certain cases in prison, they sit there and told brothers if they will sit there and shave their hair, that they will sit there and get less time? Do you know that when Joseph appeared before Pharaoh, they shaved his head? So shaving your head in Israel was only prescribed when, one, you was no longer a Nazarite. Two, when you was cleansed of your leprosy. And you got to let me know of any other ones. So just want to point that out. I am not saying that a sapar or a barber or a person getting a haircut is a bad thing. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is if your priesthood in ancient Egypt was known for having bald heads, as you see there, and so forth and so on, and the Israelite priests were told to not make baldness on their heads. If the priesthood of a people is different, then obviously the culture of a people is different. So it is frivolous and foolish to try to compare the Israelite culture based upon the Egyptian culture to sit there and say one existed and one did not. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. Introduction. We want to point out that in the Bible, the dead were not expected to be dug up. We want to point out in Egyptian culture, the dead were not expected to be dug up. We want to point out that the Bible speaks against those things. Amos chapter 2. We want to point out that it was a crime in Egypt culture to dig up the bones, the bodies of the dead. So Beckham South. We want to point those kind of things out, brothers and sisters. Why? Because they are trying to show mummies of different things and say, wow, we can sit there and find this, but I don't find nothing about the bodies of the people in the Bible. Brothers and sisters, and I say this in no disrespect, where are your great-great-great-grandparents buried? I don't know where my grandparents' grandparents are buried. I do not know that. But they had to exist for me to exist. Well, how do you know of any evidence of Abraham? Because you have the children of Abraham. That's how you know. But it's not a primary source. Hold on, let me understand this. You're telling me that I'm not a primary source, that my father existed? I'm walking, living, breathing, endeavoring to do better in life, but I'm not an example. I'm not evidence that my father existed, and my father's father existing, and my father's father's existing. That sounds foolish, brothers and sisters, in that particular case. So again, I ask, where are your great-great-grandparents buried? And how you found out, let me know, because I don't know where my great-great-grandparents are buried. I know where my mother and my father is. I know where my uncle is. I know where some of my grandparents are. That's about it. As far as it goes with that in that particular case. But when you turn aside from the way of the Most High, you walk in the congregation of the dead, is what Solomon stated. So, of course, your culture is going to be based upon that which is dead. Of course, your culture is going to be based on the book of the dead, brothers and sisters. That's not the book of the coming forth by day like they try to sit there and state. That they sit up there and promote and talk about is just what that is, the book of the dead. That is what their culture is based upon in that particular case. So it's aside from the ways of the Most High, the God of Yisrael. So that's why they go to their evidence as the dead, not to the living, not to the fact of saying we living and breathing. So we are the evidence that Kemet exists. We are the evidence that Simatawi exists. We are the evidence that Waset Thebes exists. We are the evidence that Menophah Memphis exists. No, you go and do tomb raiding like the European man did and sit there and say that's where you find your evidence the same way the European finds it. So whose team are you batting for, my conscious brother? I got to ask you that because I'm not looking forward to see Ezekiel's tomb. We got the book of Ezekiel here to sit there and gain understanding and knowledge about. Let's continue on, brothers and sisters. It seems, as will be pointed out, that the people who dealt with the digging of the bones bodies of the deceased were doing that not to their own people. Let's point this out. The evidence of the Seleucids and the Ptolemies are not questioned by anyone. Were their bodies dug up? The Seleucids and the Ptolemies were the people who ruled in the area that Alexander ruled after Alexander III died. The evidence of the rulers of the old kingdom of Egypt is not questioned. Were their bodies dug up? Was Namir and Aha and all the other ones of Dynasty 1 and Dynasty 2 found? The evidence of the Caesars of Rome is not questioned. Were their bodies dug up? Did they dig up the body of Julius Caesar? Let me know. Did they dig up the body, brothers and sisters, of Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula? Did they dig up the bones or the body of Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian? Later on, Hadrian? Let me know, brothers and sisters. I'm open to be taught. Thank you for that. It seems to be by some people using the Egyptians dead as a catalyst to say the Hebrews did not exist, which we want to point out is foolish from both the Egyptian culture and the Hebrew culture. All right, so let's continue on, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. Thank you for that. History and questions. The Valley of the Kings, built by the leaders of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, in part was built to have the pharaohs of Egypt buried. The goal was to keep the tomb raiders from getting to the bodies. How would we in 2024 feel if our deceased relatives were dug up? I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like my mother to be on part of the display inside of some museum. I would feel offended about that. How did the American government deal with those who dug up the body of Abraham Lincoln? They incarcerated them. That's what they did. It has to be pointed out because what we're doing is we're going to different cultures, be it American, be it Hebrew, be it Egyptian, to sit there and show that what the conscious community does is a violation of the Egyptian culture itself and use it as a catalyst to show about the house of Israel. Thutmose the first was one, correct me if I'm wrong, the pharaohs who was commissioning people to build what they call the Valley of the Kings. They did not, brothers and sisters, want their dead kings to be dug up. That was taboo to them. So I remember, no disrespect intended, the brother was from Jamaica, not to mention his name. And he was talking about those kind of things as reference. And I said, brother, you are what you call a brother from Jamaica, right? He's like, yes. I said, how would it be if they would have dug up the bones or the body of Nani? Now, for those who do know, Nani in the 17th and into the 18th century was a lady that is currently on the Jamaican currency. And she was a leader against slavery. How would it be if they were to sit there and go and dig up the body of Nani of Jamaica, or Leonard Parkinson of Jamaica, or Harriet Tubman of North America, the United States, or Daga of Trinidad, or Paul Bogle of Jamaica, or the Maroon leaders that were in Guyana, or the body of Nat Turner, or the body of Hannibal? How would people of that own particular nation feel about such? We want to sit there and point that out, because if we wouldn't want our dead mothers and fathers to be paraded in a museum as evidence, as if us living, breathing, walking, and talking is that evidence that our parents existed, they're saying, you know what, with you, I need to sit there and see your dead relatives in order for you to have existence. There was a man that came from Sudan to the United States, and this is no knock on the country that I live in. No, not that I'm here, America. I'm not saying that. He said America is the only place that he's ever been where he got to prove his existence through his ID card. He living, breathing, talking, and walking was not enough evidence of such. The whole idea of passports, correct me if I'm wrong, was brought up from the American matter. And we know why that is, in part so they can sit there and follow you where you've been, because every time you go to a place, they stamp it. And when you go outside the country, they ask you, what business do you have in this country? So yeah, you're followed. I'm not saying don't travel. Me and my lady have traveled. And it's a learning process as well. But if you have nothing to sit there, quote, worry about or disrespect, then do what you can do. Do what you want to do that's not against the commandments of the Most High God. And brothers and sisters, going tomb raiding is against the laws of the Most High. In the United States, it is a felony to dig up the deceased. They call that a felony 4 or felony 6. Sometimes some people refer to it as a felony 4B. Brothers and sisters, you can get up to a year or more for going and digging up the deceased. We're not talking about when the feds, or we're not talking about when the government or when the family wants to sit there and have a body disinterred and so forth and so on. We're talking about let the person, quote, rest in peace, and you're bothering it, not to sit there and solve a crime or a murder in that particular case, but just because you want to sit there and frolic with the dead and chill and hang out and say cemeteries. Brothers and sisters, again, Solomon stated, he who goes away from the laws of the Most High sits in the congregation of the dead. So you can sit there and see why they who hate the laws of Moses, which came from the Most High God, will want to sit there and have the evidence to be known by the dead, not the living. Let's continue, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. Thank you for that, family. Who found who and what we saw? Amos the first, found by Gaston Maspero. Thutmose the second, found by Gaston Maspero. Hatshepsut, found by Howard Carter. Thutmose the fourth, found by Victor Loret. These are rulers from Dynasty 18. While in Egypt in 2021, my lady Sarai and I saw some of the mummies that were in the museum. We did see Ramses. We did see Merneptah. We did see Thutmose. We did see Hatshepsut. We did see Queen Tayi. Let's go on and see what this is saying, brothers and sisters. We were not allowed to take pictures of what we saw. The reason why they said don't take pictures of the people that are deceased shown in the museums is because they said the flash of it can sit there and damage the carcass itself. There's a certain temperature that they have for those kind of things and so forth and so on. And when we went by where they have the tomb of King Tut, you best believe we were being watched like a hawk, because I forgot about it. And I took my phone, no pictures. I was like, whoa, I just took my phone, no pictures. I was like, okay, no problem. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, just wanting to sit there and point that out. They didn't even know if I was going to take a picture. And I probably just want to send a text or a call. Probably was one of the WhatsApp. But they don't want you with your phone out. They will ask you to put your phone away or leave the museum premise in that particular case. So, brothers and sisters, if you ever go to Egypt, do know that. Amos, Thutmose II, Hatshepsut, and Thutmose IV. Let's see something about this, if we will. Subscribe. That's a picture of me and my lady in 2021 when we was in Egypt, pointing this out for reference purposes. That's the first day of us being in Egypt when we went on a tour. The pyramid you're seeing behind us is the Saqqara, brothers and sisters, area in that particular case. And we asking you all to comment and subscribe to the channel. Now, earlier I did a presentation and I said when we were in Egypt, now mind you, the tour guide is the one who took our picture. That's how you don't see my arm up with me taking it and everything like that, or my lady's arm up taking it. Our tour guide took that picture of us. That was the same day as we was walking from that area when the guy was trying to sell me, he being, I'm assuming, a Muslim, he being Ishmael to the best of my knowledge, was trying to sell me, an Israelite, Hamitic idols and so forth. And that's when I was like, nah, I'll just give you $1. And he got offended, but I was already offended. You're trying to sell me an idol and so forth. So that was that very same day that happened in that particular case. So just want to point that out. Thank you for the subscribing. For those who do it, it's appreciated. Thank you for that. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. Hi, I'm Thutmose IV and was disrespected by Victor Loret. Now, that's a statue of Thutmose IV. Of course, they chopped the nose off. You know how they do. And we see, brothers and sisters, Victor Loret. That's the guy who discovered, if you will, or found, if you will, the body of Thutmose IV. Now, the writing that you see in between them, correct me if I'm wrong, is the hieratic writing. And it gets into something very, very interesting as we get into this presentation, brothers and sisters. Let's continue. Hi, I am Hatshepsut. After my stepson Thutmose III wanted me to look masculine, the guy Howard Carter disrespected me. Now, of course, part of her nose there in that statue there is cut off. And then you have Howard Carter. That's the person who, quote, discovered or found Hatshepsut, right? Let's continue in this, asking you all again to subscribe to the channel. What Ramses IX would say to people who are conscious today? During my time, some idiots decided to raid the tomb of rulers before me, and they were executed by being hung. We did not tolerate the tomb raiding that the said, quote, conscious community of today endorses. We knew the Hebrews and of them and called them Apiru. You can read of, I meant to put them, in the Amana records. No need to dig me up. So what do we want to point out, brothers and sisters? All right. You can read of the Hebrews in what is referred to as the Amana records. Right? So now that right there is the mummy of Ramses IX. Brothers and sisters, this is not to be redundant, but if somebody were to sit there and say, here, here's your grandfather, how would you sit there and feel? Some people, for whatever reason, take pictures with their phones of people when they're already deceased inside the casket. Some people do that. That's whatever it is in that particular case. But we know that it looks weird. Not even weird, maybe strange, when people take pictures next to the dead body. Like, this is my man's and we're going to sit there and all pose around son's casket or brother man's casket. To each their own. But that seems to be a little weird in certain cases. So, what do we want to point out, brothers and sisters, not to be redundant with the timing allotted? right? So I'm going to go back here for a reference. Thutmose the Fourth, in the matter of the 19th century into the 20th century, is when these bodies was found. Look at the gentleman on the left. Look at the gentleman on the right. And these are the people that did what they use as, quote, evidence to sit there and come to the Israelites with, to sit there and state, see, they found. So we have to ask, who are they and we? I'll wait. I'll be right back. Maybe somebody could type it in. When they say we found or they found, I already proved and showed who are the we and they that did this, quote, finding. So who's your teacher? For the lack of a better term, who's your daddy? Who is your, if we would go to the Far East, sensei? Who is, if we go the Hebrew way, your more? Is that your more? Is that your teacher? Brothers and sisters, why do I go and speak upon that in that particular case? Because it's frivolous to look at the work of Howard Carter. Brothers and sisters, it is frivolous to look at the work of Victor Lorette and other ones such as Edward Araton and such as Theodore David, who found what they call the tomb of Horemheb, and say, well, Israelites need to sit there and maybe hire Europeans to sit there and find the dead of the Israelites. Brothers and sisters, why do I say that? Because the living of the Israelites showed that there had to have been Israelites beforehand. See, the scriptures talks about where the children of Israel come from. A Chaldean man and a Chaldean woman named Abraham. The Israelites descended from a people called the Chaldeans. Israel didn't just pop up out of nowhere like that. But now, since Israel has sadly gone to sleep, it is now the movement of said, some quote, conscious people in the year of enlightenment. This is the year of enlightenment, when I can, one, say I claim Egyptian science while not having to follow the culture of the Egyptians. Yeah. Well, I can say I can any part of Africa, but I ain't putting no plates in my lip. Yeah. Where I can sit there and say, hey, I'm indigenous to America, and I don't have to sit there and ever claim to have ever been a slave, even though my name is McKinley. MC, identifying that of the son of the Irish. We walk around with names like Hutchinson. We walk around with names, brothers and sisters, such as Peterson. We walk around with names such as Robinson. And then sit there and state that we as a people who do not look anything like the English, the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish, was never colonized or enslaved or influenced, if you want to make it monotone. We were influenced, at least, to sit there and name our children names that was imposed on our ancestors. You understand? So, sidebar, and I say this in no disrespect. I have been asked, well, brother, you don't go to camps. You know yourself as an Israelite. You go online, you do lessons, you do presentations, you do things that's cool, and I want to give you some advice, brother. Okay, cool. But brother, you don't go to camps? No, I do not. And this is no way, shape, form, or fashion to knock it, because my mother, may she rest in peace, over 40 years ago, brought me to a camp. But a brother, not to be haughty, is an author. I do not know where a person running an organization, online or offline, wants you to be part of their organization while you're showing 5, 10, 15 books that you and your lady wrote. So now let's get into this and move on for edification purposes. Now, I'm saying that what Thutmose the Fourth would have stated, what Hatshepsut would have stated, and what Ramses the Ninth would have stated. During my time, some idiots decided to raid the tomb of rulers before me, and they were executed by being hung. We did not tolerate the tomb raiding that the said conscious community of today endorses. We knew the Hebrews and of them and called them Apiru. You can read of them in the Amarna records. No need to dig me up. Can we think that if Ramses the Ninth were to be here today, that he would not say anything of that kind of sort? Let's go on, brothers and sisters. When you know your stuff and you have grounded information on a subject, regardless of what the subject is, you have a strong foundation and confidence. Do not let they who are not as grounded as you are make you feel you are grounded in being arrogant. No, on the contrary, being arrogant means you cannot stand to be told anything and refute information. Whereas being grounded means you are comfortable in what you are saying. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. I don't know how to cook. I don't even have the patience to stand there and put this seasoning in and put that oil in and to make sure this is done. I don't have the patience for that. But I would never try to say that somebody who has abilities and skills that I personally don't have and that I do not care to go hard body to get into, that you're arrogant or belligerent and so forth and so on. That's not fair and respectful. Just because a person has a particular way of doing things that's not against the Most High God, then what's wrong with that? Let's continue, brothers and sisters. And I want to explain why I showed that index part of the book on the right side in a minute. The Hyksos were called that by the Greeks. They themselves were called Hakusoswet, and they were the rulers, not the regular people of the Asiatics. Thus, we should note the people who were called Hyksos, Hakusoswet, did not call themselves such a term. The people called the Amu, Setu, Retenu, Kor, Dijahi, etc., did not call themselves such a term. So what am I pointing out here, brothers and sisters? And that is this, that the people who were called Amu, Setu, Retenu, Kor, Dijahi, as well as Hakusoswet, the people who were called those terms didn't call themselves those terms. For debate purposes or debate reasons, I want to explain that the term Semitic is also a misnomer. Shem is the Hebrew word. Sem is the Greek transliteration of such. Since Greek does not have a sh sh syllable, it is thus in metathesis said as sem. Now I want to, brothers and sisters, ask you in your own time to look up this word, what metathesis is. All right, because it gets into lingual matters. Just want to state that there for edification purposes, if we will, right? Said as sem instead of the Hebrew shem. Taking the understanding that sem means mixed, which is some of the things the online community states, is not scholarly, and the roots in linguistics of a matter shows it to not be the case. Scholars also stated that the Asiatics were the ones who introduced metal weaponry to Egypt, as well as the use of the chariot. It should be noted that the Hyksos were not a set group of people, but rather, like the Apiru, a social class of Asiatics that were living in Egypt. The individual nation of the Asiatics belonged to is Amalekite, Hebrew, Israelite, Babylonian, Kassite, Assyrian, and the Anastasia Papyrus, Edom. During the time of Ramses, you had it to where the Anastasia Papyrus speaks of the people of Edom. Now, Edom, according to the Bible, is a descendant of Abraham or Abraham. The Assyrians spoke of the people called the Udumo. Udumo is the Assyrian way speaking of the Edomites. And this is pointed out in the book that will be spoken upon with the sell of it for Black History Month in this presentation for those who are interested. All those different nations existed. Some of them still do exist. Would you go to the Assyrians and look for the evidence of Tiglath-Pileser, Shalmaneser, Sennacherib, and Sargon, and Ashurbanipal by looking at the Ramses? No, that's foolery. That's foolishness. Just the same, you need not go into the records of, say, Amos, Amenhotep, Thutmose, Hatshepsut, Amenhotep, and Akhenaten, and so forth, in order to sit there and show whether David, Solomon, Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa existed. Two different people living in two different lands, even though at sometimes the nations met, whether it be for peace or for war. Those are things we want to point out for reference purposes. Why did I go and show this book here, Index? I wanted to sit there and use my pen, if I may, right, and circle that first part. Amu, Asiatics. Hopefully that can be seen in here. This is the book written by Sir Alan Gardiner called Egypt of the Pharaohs. And in this book, on page 37, 131, 141, and 157, he speaks of the Asiatics, brothers and sisters. Shalom, my brother, Uziel. Shalom, my brother. Thank you for joining us. Looking at it in this particular case, who were these Asiatics that were called the Amu inside the Egyptian culture, which is mentioned by one of their famed scholars, Sir Alan Gardiner, in his book here called Egypt of the Pharaohs? See, the reason why I pointed this out is because, and it's not to sound arrogant, oh, well, you think you know everything. No, I don't. What I am going to say, nonetheless, brothers and sisters, is, as pointed out on the left-hand side, when you ground it in what you do know, don't make anyone make you feel as if you should not expound upon the knowledge that the Most High has given you on whatever it is, be it to know how to go over history, or be it to know how to sit there and expound upon making a shoe. All right? So let us continue with the timing allotted. I remember asking people in a, quote, debate matter and saying, who are the Amu that's mentioned in the Middle Kingdom of Egypt? Who are the Amu? Oh, brother, you mean Anu. No, I mean Amu, A-A-M-U, not A-N-U. And you didn't have enough time to even Google that to sit there and try to find out what somebody was talking about. So I had to sit there and, not to be funny or racial, we see exactly the gentleman on the right side and what people he belonged to by default, and the gentleman on the left side who dug up these Hamitic peoples in history and what people they belong to. Sir Alan Gardiner is of the same ethnic racial background of the people who dug up the things that people try to use for evidence. So I had to sit there and go and use, the so-called, that man, in order to sit there and say, see, now I got to ask you, what is this talking about right here? You understand? Let that be pointed out for reference purposes. So again, it is foolery, brothers and sisters, to try to sit there and use the matter of the Egyptians to try to show the evidence of the Israelites. That's something we care to point out in that case. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to type it in that particular case. All right? Thank you for that. Who took this? This is the Archer Titus. What do we see here is the menorah, brothers and sisters, in this case. We see here the trumpets, brothers and sisters. And correct me if I'm wrong, we see here part of the altar stuff that they took over when they left and took items out of Jerusalem and brought it to where? Some say different places. Some say Vatican, some say the museum, some say catacombs, who knows? But it was memorialized of what they did in taking the stuff from Jerusalem. That's a historical matter. What are we seeing, brothers and sisters, on the right side? Is a picture from the 18th dynasty of Egypt. We already went over the color of this over like 19 times in presentations, showing people who were Syria. Syria was called Kor in ancient Egyptian people. The Egyptians were used to seeing people looking like this, brothers and sisters. In this particular case, see what the conscious community sadly does is they try to sit there and they look at what modern Syria, after Ptolemies and the Seleucids done been there, of the Greeks, and seeing the people looking the way they do now there, and looking at ancient Egypt. See, you don't look at the people that you see in the Egyptian embassy that look like the people in modern day Syria. You look at ancient Egypt and say that's, quote, for the lack of a better term, black people, but you don't look at ancient Syria to say, as we can show there, the ancient Syrians shown in ancient Egypt as being what you call black people. So that's how you know people are biased in their presentations. Are we to sit back and think that black people just ended at Egypt before the Sinai and didn't continue? That doesn't make any sense. Just as much as it doesn't make sense to sit back and think that black people was not in the Western Hemisphere until the Atlantic slave trade. A particular group of black people were brought over during the slave trade, but there were people of color here prior to the Atlantic slave trade, and we're going over that, brothers and sisters. So what we want to get into and continuing this, if I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. What are we seeing here is, as pointed out before, from the Danite stele, Yisrael. This is dated to the 8th century, brothers and sisters, or the 9th century, brothers and sisters, BCE. And this was found in the 1990s, and it speaks about Beit Dawid, or the house of David. So when people stated, well, there's no external references of David, but you said that in the 1990s before this book was known, such as Ian Wilson's book that's called The Bible is History. That's why studying is important for reference purposes. Let's continue, family. Thank you for the timing. They ain't right what they did to that Hamite. Wrong is wrong. Ament per Nefer. If I said his name wrong, correct me. Of ancient Egypt robbed the tomb of the ruler named Sobek himself. Sobek himself was a ruler who ruled in the second intermediate period. He ruled in the 13th dynasty, some people try to say the 17th dynasty of Egypt, according to historians. Shalom, my brother, Mazatia. So, in the timing, brothers and sisters, of Ramses the Ninth, who ruled after Dynasty 13, it wasn't a co-regency, as in 13 and 19th dynasty was at the same time. It wasn't like that. Is when, during the time of Ramses the Ninth, is when people went into the tomb of the rulers of the intermediate period and started to rob it. That was taboo in Egyptian culture. And brothers and sisters, to recap and what we were talking about, if we will, that is what that writing there is about in Egyptian culture. This is referred to as the Amherst Papyrus. Some people today refer to it as the Papyrus Leopold II. And in that particular thing is when they were saying it was a crime and what punishment was done even in Egyptian culture for going into the dead. I do not endorse the worship of Ma'ah or Me'ah, or what they say in English as Ma'at. And what they call the principles of Ma'at of ancient Egypt, one of the things they stated is, I have not defiled the deceased. So how are you, my comedic conscious brother, sister, looking at the quote-unquote work done by Victor Loret, or, brothers and sisters, done by Howard Carter as an example to sit there and say, maybe you should hire Europeans to sit there and go and dig up the dead of the ancient house of Israel. We don't want to do that. We okay with us being alive and wanting to live better and our children to have a better life than we have. That's what we want. We want to live better than our ancestors and have our children live better than us. We try to think futuristic. You see, brothers and sisters, in this particular case, while we love history, yeah, we do try to think futuristic. You see this right here? Yisrael, that yod, I want to circle that, if you will, for edification purposes, right? What you see right there, that identifies the future tense in Hebrew. That yod, sin, resh, aleph, lamed, that yod in the beginning is the prefix of the third masculine singular future tense. So though we love history and though we love our book of Chronicles and we love our book of Kings and our book of Samuel and so forth and so on and our book of Josephus and so forth and so on, as well as others, we do not want to get so caught up in history to where we don't know what to do 2-3 years from now. That is not intelligent. And you find that out by reading some of the things done in history as well. All right. So again, just want to point that out for reference purposes, if you will. Hopefully everybody is well and will be better. Now, you're not supposed to go into and dig up and defile the deceased in any society. Correct me if I'm wrong. Even in an ancient Egyptian society. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall a matter be established. Yes, my brothers and sisters, I may cite other things, but I am an Israelite. I do cite the scriptures, which we just read there from the book of Deuteronomy chapter 19. We want to point out that it is frivolous to try to use the Egyptians as a catalyst to state if the ancient Hebrews existed. The existence of the Israelites, the Hebrews, is not contested when we see the evidence that can be found in the British Museum, the Pergamon Museum, and the Louvre Museum. I think that's how you pronounce it. Correct me if I'm wrong. The teleprism speaks of King Hezekiah of Judah. The Rations tablet of Jehoiakim speaks of Jehoiakim of Judah. The Mishnah still speaks of the Israelites, namely to the tribe of Gad. So, brothers and sisters, what do we want to point out? In our left, as we can see with the laser pointer, the asterisk, British Museum, the teleprism, Pergamon Museum, the matter of King Jehoiakim, the Louvre Museum, found in France, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Paris, is where the Mishnah still is at. So when they try to come to Israelites and say, Israelites don't ever deal with museums, they only cite the Bible. No. The things that we cite, such as these things, are not even mentioned in the Bible. Like the Bible doesn't say King Misha also spoke about the tribe of Gad. The Bible doesn't say that. When you go in 2 Kings chapter 3, when it speaks about King Misha of Moab, it doesn't mention nothing about the tribe of Gad in that portion. But Misha spoke about the Israelites, namely the tribe of Gad, on his own accord. So these are things we care to bring out for reference purposes, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, creator, maker of heaven and earth. Let's continue with the timing allotted. Museums that we spoke of. We know as Israelites, we do not, quote, need external references to prove the existence of our history. However, it does not hurt. The fact remains that the truth will come from the earth, Psalms 85. Thus, it is not bad or sad thing to bring this information out. To the left is the Louvre Museum. If I mispronounce it, let me know. And to the right is the British Museum. These are 2 of the museums that have and house the things and items that we spoke about that shows evidence of the house of Israel. So when people sit there and state that they don't deal with museums as Israelites, that's not true. We're not afraid to go outside of the biblical text to sit there and speak upon matters and so forth and so on. Not that we have to, but we have a base. And our base, if you're Torah-based, that is your base. We are okay with just the Torah itself for our own selves and for our families and so forth, for our marriages and so forth and so on. You understand? So let us continue in this particular matter. Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. The Ashanti and Ga in Ghana. The Ashanti people in part is some of the people you see on top. The God people are some of the people that you see on the bottom there. And we ask you all again to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for that, typing that in, my lady Sarai. Why do we go here? We're going to show you why and expound upon such. The God people. The God dogmen claim to be descendants of the Israelite or Israeli tribes of Gad and Dan. And if so, no wonder that on their own way to Ghana, they passed through Nigeria, where the Igbo, who are predominantly descendants of Gad, but has among them tribes of Israel such as Dan, Judah, Levi, Zebulun, etc. Brothers and sisters, you can sit there and see this kind of information coming from the God people of their own selves and what they claim. Why do I go here in that particular case? Because the God people in Ghana are part of the people who claim to be of the house of Israel. The Sefwi people in Ghana also claim to be of Israel. Igbo people in Nigeria also claim to be Israel. Ibibio people in Nigeria also claim to be Israel. The Ewe people in Ghana, as well as the Ashanti people in Ghana, also claim to be of the house of Israel. These people are alive and breathing in 2024. You see, with you're going outside of the laws and culture that the Most High established. Like Solomon said, you go into the house of the dead. So the conscious community has to go and look at dead corpse that they who rule in Egypt today don't even allow you to take a picture of in these days and times. Us as Israel can just take a passport, fly way over yonder if you want to sit there and talk to the Ashanti people and why they say they are of the tribe of Israel. Where I work at, there was a messenger that used to come, and he said that he's from Nigeria. I said, "Oh, from where you from? You from Yoruba, Igbo, from Igbo?" I said, "Brother, let me ask you a question. Now, mind you, I'm in uniform, so you don't see fringes." And I say this not to knock wearing fringes. You don't see jewelry showing of me being of the Israelite way of life. I'm in straight uniform of the United States of America at a job. I said, "Where did Igbo people come from?" "We come from Israel, the Niger Jews." And then he just walked right out the building. I was like, wow. I guess he really had to sit there while at work, make his move. But I can sit there and attest before the Most High that the man did state that. So, and that was in the past 5 years, brothers and sisters. So if these people are claiming after the year 2000 and before to be of the house of Israel, and there are elders that are saying it, we don't have to sit there and look for the dead prophets in the scriptures to sit there and state, well, that's evidence. We don't have to do that. You can sit there and get your passport if you want to and fly over through American Airlines or go through another port, Terminal 2 or B at Kennedy Airport in New York, and go over there and see people looking like you, and you can ask them questions, and if they're open, they'll talk to you. My teachers wrote to the so-called philosophers, the Beta Israel and Ethiopia, and they wrote back to my teachers, and they told my teachers that they come from the house of Israel and been there since the time of Solomon, king of Israel. How can people who still in Lalibela and Gondar in Ethiopia in 2024 be dismissed while you're looking up the work of Howard Carter and other Europeans digging up dead bodies? How does that prove more evidence than people who never been colonized? Some of them still don't even speak English, claiming certain things, brothers and sisters. See, that's what happens when you walk into the congregation of the dead. Everything has to be proven through the dead. Who does that? The dead. Let's continue, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. The Igbo people in Nigeria and in Jamaica. Why do I point that out? The gentleman you see there is Samuel Sharp. Remember his name. I would rather die among yonder gallows than live in slavery. So much for people saying that we were not enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. See, that's a whole other subject. We were already here. We were never from Africa. Tell the people in Jamaica that when they teach their children about the history of the Maroons. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is people in Nigeria. You see their garments, you see how they're dressed and so forth and so on. Now, I mean not to assume, pardon me for doing that if I am, but it appears that that's an elder putting her hand on the back of a youth or a young man. And he looks like the lady next to him prostrating to an elder, which, to the best of my knowledge, would show some kind of form of respect. Daddy Sharp, shown on the right-hand side, was from the Igbo or Igbo people in Nigeria, who in the 1800s in Jamaica led a rebellion. The same time frame that Nat Turner did his. In the 1970s, Daddy Sharp, or Sam Sharp, was put on the Jamaican currency. He is a hero in that particular case. These are things, brothers and sisters, we care to point out for reference purposes. Daddy Sharp or Sam Sharp led over, brothers and sisters, 15,000 people in rebellion against slavery in the 1830s. Let's not forget those things, brothers and sisters. Let's continue in that. We ask you all to stay tuned for the books that are on sale. Thanks. On this channel, we have expounded on the evidence of the Israelites for over 5 years. The essential point of this presentation is to show that it is frivolous to prove, to use anyone, Egyptian, Hebrew, or others, to state a people did not exist. We want to point out that saying, oh, that didn't exist, that they didn't exist, he didn't exist, she didn't exist, that didn't exist, is the poorest form of scholarship. That means you did not take out the time to try to research something. You just dismiss it by saying it don't exist. That's poor scholarship. Don't do that. We hope and pray that everyone is well and will be better. We ask you all to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. We want to in the time we are in speak of the book sale as well. All right, let's look. Danite sale. These books are priced such at $15 from now to February 29th. This deal is only available online. So you can go on Amazon right now and get these books that are usually priced $20 and $30 for $15 in the matter of, quote, Black History Month. Just want to point that out for reference purposes. You can type it in by typing in the author name, Vincent Hutchinson, or by typing in From Assyria to America and see the pricing about that in that particular case. Any questions about it, I can be reached at 908-587-4841 or email yyisrael22@yahoo.com. Danite sale, Egypt Talking Writing, Deuteronomy 28, History Untold to the Masses, like the books before. These are priced during the rest of this month, as known as, quote, Black History Month, brothers and sisters, for $15 on Amazon. You can get that online. It's a deal, it's a sale, and commemoration, if you will, of what is referred to as Black History Month. It's not something bad in that case. I can be reached at that same number, 908-587-4841. Danite sale, Israelite history as it relates to the world. That book right there kind of touches on what we went over in this presentation. All right. This book is priced at $15 from now until February 29th. I can be reached at the number, as you see there. Much respect to my lady Sarai and to the people who have supported. We hope you all are well and will be better. The books which are $10. You can get the shortened version of the book. These are available on Amazon.com. Type in the name Yeshaya Yisrael to see the list of books available. I can be reached at 908-587-4841, brothers and sisters. From Alex to Alex, we ask you all to subscribe. If you like this presentation, we ask you to share such. The next presentation is set for Thursday, February 15th on this channel. That is to say, more Yeshaya history lessons. Stay tuned and share your thoughts. Shalom. Now, what do I mean when I say from Alex to Alex? Alexander the Third is Alexander the Great to Alexander Stevens. Thursday, February 15th. Cash App, $ Frankson1. $FRANKSSON, the number 1. For those who are interested. To the people who have bought the books, I appreciate it. It's definitely appreciated, hands down. I do want to state that. And if you have done so, let me know what you think. My number is in all of the books that I wrote, brothers and sisters. And when you get into the description of this presentation, you will see the link on where my ladies' book is at. So just want to point that out for, say, reference purposes, if we will, brothers and sisters. All right. So as we close this particular presentation out, brothers and sisters, I do not claim to know everything, and I am open to constructive criticism. Books are $10 that are there. $10, well, $15 that one. Each of these, 15 until February 29th, when the price will change. Brothers and sisters. All right. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. The synopsis of this presentation, brothers and sisters, is that you cannot use anyone's culture as a catalyst to say another culture or people did not exist. You would not, in logic, sit there and look at Cantonese culture to sit there and say that Vietnamese culture did not and does not exist. That only happens when people, while not caring about the rules of a particular culture, in this particular case, because it was taboo to even dig up the bodies of the ancient Egyptians in their own culture. Thus, you see Thutmose the First with the Valley of the Kings. Thus, you see what happened in the timing of what happened with Ramses the Ninth, when they actually, in ancient Egypt, impaled a man by hanging him for digging into the tomb of the kings of the second intermediate period. When you read about, brothers and sisters, what is referred to as the papyrus Amherst, also known as Papyrus Leopold II of ancient Egypt. So just want to point that out. We are going to, brothers and sisters, close this particular presentation out. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. All right, I'm going to put my number in here. I can be reached 908-587-4841. All right, care to donate for those who do. That is $ French Sun 1. That is the Cash App in that particular case. $FRANKSSON, the number 1. All right, in that particular manner, in case. Brothers and sisters, let's look at this for reference matters. These are the books that a brother wrote. Deuteronomy 28, the shortened version, if you will. Egypt Talking Writing, the shortened version. Brothers and sisters, From Avaris to Alabama, brothers and sisters, the shortened version of the book, From Assyria to America. For those brothers and sisters who are interested, you can get these books, as we pointed out, online. All right? Hoping and praying, brothers and sisters, that everybody is well and will be better. So, Most High be with you all, hopefully, with all of us. I have a conference call very soon, and thus ends the presentation in this particular matter. Shalom. Most High bless.